We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. While I stirred the sauce, the last thing on my mind should have been murder. But there I was, gripping the wooden spoon a little too tight, watching the red swirl in the pot like blood in water. Garlic, crushed tomatoes, a dash of oregano. Delaney's recipe. I made it for her before our first anniversary, back when I thought loyalty meant something to her. Now I could barely stand the smell. The sound of her laughter floated in from the living room. She was playing hostess, charming her family like she always did. Her voice had that perfect mix of warmth and performance. I used to love that about her. Now it made my stomach turn. While they laughed, I stood in our kitchen, my kitchen, pretending everything was normal. But everything had changed 2 nights ago when I accidentally opened her burner phone. Yeah, burner phone. I hadn't even known she had one until it buzzed behind a stack of towels in the laundry room. One tap. A message preview. I still taste you. Last night was dangerous. Let's do it again. My heart didn't drop. It shattered and disappeared completely. I didn't confront her. I didn't rage. I watched her, quietly, closely, like she was an enemy in my house. While she smiled, while she sipped wine with her sister, while she touched my arm at dinner and whispered, "You're amazing for doing all this." I smiled back. "Anything for you." While I played the fool, I studied her every move. While she thought I was just the loyal husband, what else had she been doing behind my back? Preparing dinner used to mean something in this house. It was routine, comfortable, my way of grounding us after long weeks. Delaney would pick the wine. I'd handle the food. We had our system. But now everything felt staged. As I laid the steak on the counter, unwrapped the butcher paper, and began seasoning it, my mind replayed every moment I used to ignore. Her unexplained late meetings, the text she answered in the bathroom, the time she came home from yoga wearing heels. Preparing the meal was just a cover now, a distraction while my rage marinated. I placed the skillet on the burner, watching the oil heat up, crackling quietly. I moved like I always did, focused, calm, deliberate, but inside my brain was racing. Preparing dinner was easy. Preparing revenge? That took more thought. I glanced over at my phone, screen locked. I had screenshots, voicemails, even location history. And I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was planned. She met him often. Hotels, lunch breaks, even once in her driveway while I was out of town. I heard her heels click on the tile as she walked into the kitchen. "Smells amazing, babe," she said. She leaned in to kiss my cheek. I let her. "Thanks," I said, flipping the steak. "Should be done right before they all arrive." She smiled and walked off, humming. She didn't notice the recorder in my pocket. She didn't notice the second phone in the drawer with the call logs. She didn't know that I wasn't just preparing dinner. I was preparing to end everything she thought was secure. The real question wasn't if I'd go through with it. It was how far was I willing to go. Dinner started at 6. By 6:15, the entire family was seated around the oak table. Her parents, her younger sister Harper, and her brother-in-law Miles. Delaney was radiant, polished, playing the role of the perfect wife. She poured wine like a pro, served the bread, made everyone laugh. I was the chef, the husband, the background support act. But my eyes never left her. She had on that green dress I liked, the one with the low back. I used to think she wore it for me. Now I wondered if Briggs had seen it pulled up over her hips. I served the plates one by one, smiling, joking. I caught her mother looking at me with approval. Her dad nodded, taking a sip of red wine. "You really outdid yourself, Logan." "Appreciate that, sir," I replied. I locked eyes with Delaney as I said it. She tilted her head, curious, slightly thrown off. Harper passed the potatoes. Miles talked about their upcoming trip to Florida. The table was full of warmth and laughter. But underneath it all, I was studying her. Her smile, her posture, the way she avoided eye contact when I mentioned the new client I met near her office. Her fork paused midair. Small detail. But I noticed. I sipped my wine calmly. The printed screenshots sat hidden in a sealed envelope upstairs. The burner phone? Still in the garage. Waiting. Dinner wasn't just a meal tonight. It was the final supper before her image collapsed. "Logan," her mother said, "you're the kind of man women dream of marrying." I looked across the table at Delaney. She was frozen, just for a moment. Yeah, I said slowly. I used to believe that too. The steak was medium rare, but the tension at the table? Burning hot, for better or worse. Those words echoed in my head as I collected the empty salad bowls. The same phrase I said at our wedding, standing across from her in front of 60 friends and relatives. Back then, it felt permanent, like armor, like something that protected us both. Now, it just sounded like a bad joke. For how long have you felt like this? She once asked me during a small argument, months ago. I hadn't known how to answer then, but now I do. Since the day I realized I wasn't the only one trying. I stood in the kitchen, alone for a moment, looking out the small window over the sink. Delaney was outside on the patio, laughing with her sister. Her voice carried lightly in the warm, spring air. She was good at this. Too good. I grabbed 2 more wine bottles from the counter. As I did, her father walked in. "Logan," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "I have to say, man, you're something else. Cooking for all of us like this? That's not something a lot of men would do." I gave him a short smile. "It's no big deal." "It is," he said. "You've always treated her right. That's rare these days." I nodded, fighting the heat building in my chest. I wanted to scream, to shout the truth, to ask him if he still thought I was a good man when he saw the hotel receipts. But not yet, because I wasn't doing this for them anymore. Not for Delaney, not for appearances. This time it was for me, for the dignity I almost lost, for the truth she buried under fake smiles, and for the justice she never thought was coming. I hadn't been to the garage in weeks. Not really, just quick grabs for tools or supplies. But that night, once the dinner ended and everyone started moving toward dessert, I slipped out and walked straight there. The air was cooler in there. Still, quiet. Mine. I clicked on the light. A faint buzzing came from the overhead bulb. The tools were all where I left them. Clean. Sharp. Labeled. The shelves were stacked the way I liked. Lined up like soldiers. This space was my world. Delaney never touched this place. She never even pretended to care about it. This was the one place she didn't decorate, didn't paint, didn't fill with her nonsense throws and Pinterest DIYs. And now it would be where her truth unraveled. I opened the bottom drawer of my old metal workbench, pulled out the burner phone, powered it on. There was again. The messages. Briggs. Can't stop thinking about last night. Same time next week. Delaney. Yes. But we have to be more careful. He's starting to notice. I stared at that one. Starting to notice? I wasn't starting. I was already there. I'd already passed the line between shock and clarity. I opened the hidden compartment behind the shelves. My old GoPro setup. A compact recorder. Flash drives labeled from an old private security job I took freelance years ago. She never asked what I used to do before I met her. That was a mistake. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was reclamation. My peace. My life. My story to finish. And when I stepped back into the house, smiling like nothing was wrong, she looked at me across the room. And for the first time, I swear, she felt it. Something inside me had changed. Her perfume hit me before she entered the room. Vanilla, faint citrus. Always the same. Familiar. Intimate. But now it made my throat tighten. I turned just as Delaney stepped into the hallway, her smile soft. "Fake. Everything okay?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. "Yeah," I said. "Just needed a breather." She moved closer, her tone dropping. "You've been off tonight. Something wrong." I almost laughed. The irony. She was asking me what was wrong? "I'm fine," I said. "Just tired." She reached out, rubbed her thumb gently across my chest. "You've done so much for everyone today." For me. Wife's hands. Wife's smile. Wife's lies. And then it clicked. That's how she kept control. She softened everything. Wrapped poison in warmth. Made betrayal feel like affection. But I knew what she was now. And that night, I saw her not as my wife, but as the woman who was willing to risk everything we built for hotel sheets and cheap whispers. Back in the dining room, her sister Harper poured wine. Her dad was showing Miles something on his phone. Delaney leaned in, her mouth at my ear. "Let's take a trip soon. Just us. We need it." "Sure," I said, eyes fixed ahead. Wife's plans. Wife's version of damage control. Wife's way of pretending it hadn't all already burned down. But the truth? She was no longer my wife. Not in the way that mattered. She just didn't know it yet. There's a difference between being surrounded by people and feeling truly alone. I stood at the edge of our dining room, watching Delaney float between guests like nothing was wrong. Her family adored her, always had. Her mother kept saying things like, "You're the heart of this family, and we're lucky to have you." Lucky. That was the word that kept repeating all night. Lucky to have Delaney. Lucky to have this house. Lucky to have such a perfect marriage. I clenched my jaw and looked around. The entire room was filled with people who didn't know they were sitting in the middle of a lie. They laughed, shared memories, complimented the food. Harper asked if we were thinking about kids soon. Delaney winked and said, "Maybe sooner than you think." I had to excuse myself before I crushed the wine glass in my hand. I went upstairs to the guest room, closed the door, opened the drawer where I'd stashed a printed set of screenshots, texts, locations, receipts. I fanned them out across the bed. They covered the entire blanket. Entire months of betrayal. Meetings at a hotel 30 minutes from my office. Photos with timestamps. Her name signed into the guest log, once under mine. This wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was organized, ongoing, intentional. I stood there, staring down at the wreckage of what used to be our life, and realized something. This dinner wasn't about impressing her family. It was about showing them the version of her they didn't know existed. They thought she was the light in the room. I was about to bring in the blackout. Family is supposed to be your anchor, your roots. But the more I looked at Delaney's family that night, the more I realized they trained her for this. Her father had this way of talking over everyone at the table. Loud, decisive. Her mother smoothed every tense moment with a polished smile. Harper played perfect, too. All image. No lips. Delaney didn't invent the mask. She inherited it. And I started to wonder if this whole dinner was her move, not mine. Maybe this was her chessboard. She knew her family's presence would make me hesitate. She knew the room would be full of fake warmth and family stories. She was banking on my silence. If that was her game, it almost worked. I sat across from her mother, who complimented the lasagna like it was a Michelin dish. "You really know how to take care of Delaney," she said. I nodded. "I try." Delaney squeezed my hand under the table. A bold move. I looked over at her, and in her eyes I saw it. The fear. She didn't know what I'd do next. She wasn't sure if I'd blow it all up right here. And in that moment, I realized something. She wasn't just playing defense now. She was waiting for the hit. Her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. Her laugh felt hollow. And the more I looked around that table, the more I realized what I had to do. They had to see it. All of them. The real her. The version of their golden daughter they never thought existed. And when they did, they'd never look at her the same again. I used to be the kind of man who gave people the benefit of the doubt. I believed in communication, in patience, in trying again when things got hard. That's how I was raised. That's how I handled every fight we ever had, until I found out she was sleeping with someone else while I was booking us an anniversary trip. That changed who I am. I sat outside that night on the back steps, just far enough from the noise of the family still inside, and thought about who I was now. I was the man who was about to burn it all down. I was the man who wouldn't look away this time. I was the man who'd been lied to, cheated on, and handed fake smiles like they were currency. I pulled out my phone and played one of the voicemails again. Delaney's voice. Breathless. Whispering. "I miss you already. I wish I could be with you tonight instead." The timestamp? The night I was in the ER for a client injury. She told me she stayed home. Said she watched reruns and ordered takeout. Lies. All of it. The rage sat in my chest like a loaded gun. I opened my notes app and began typing a list. A timeline. Every date, every message, every slip-up she made. I wasn't doing this blindly. This wasn't just revenge anymore. I was building a case. Because if Delaney thought I was going to break down, walk away quietly, and cry in a hotel room somewhere, she forgot who she married. She forgot what I do when I'm pushed too far. I stepped into the garage with one goal: control. Not just to grab extra chairs, not just to catch my breath, but to remind myself that I was still the one holding the match. And I hadn't lit it yet. The night air seeped through the cracked concrete walls. The hum of distant laughter from inside felt like it belonged to a different life. I clicked on the overhead light and stepped deeper in. This was where I'd kept the burner phone since the moment I found it. tucked inside an old toolbox, behind loose jumper cables and a broken drill I never bothered to fix. I opened the lid. Still there. Still full of secrets. The screen lit up. One new message. Same place tomorrow? Can't stop thinking about your mouth. I stared at it for a long time. She had the nerve to keep seeing him even tonight. Even while I was making dinner for her entire damn family. This wasn't weakness or confusion. This was a game to her. I clicked the side of the phone, locked the screen, and opened a drawer near the back wall. Inside was a manila folder. Printed copies of every digital receipt, timestamp screenshots, even a few photos taken for public cameras near the hotel entrances, all collected legally. All traceable. All undeniable. I was building more than a case. I was building a moment. One that would hit her in front of everyone she used to manipulate. One that would leave her exposed, without a single place to hide. I took a breath, steady and cold. Then I stepped out of the garage, back toward the house, 2 chairs in hand, smile back on my face. Let her think I just stepped away to help. She had no idea I'd stepped into something else entirely. Delaney didn't notice how long I was gone. She was too busy refilling wine glasses and complimenting her dad's terrible jokes. Her laugh echoed through the house. Crisp, polished, designed to keep everyone wrapped around her finger. But I knew what I had stepped into. Not just a marriage. Not just a betrayal. A war. A quiet one. Personal. Strategic. I stepped into the kitchen again, passing her without a word. "You okay?" she asked softly, hand grazing my back. "Yeah," I said. "Just needed a second." She smiled. "You're always doing everything. You never stop." That line. I'd heard it before. It was her way of keeping me docile, stroking my ego just enough to keep me compliant. But she didn't know I'd already stepped into her world and saw how she operated. She didn't know the line she crossed couldn't be uncrossed. I checked my phone under the table. The audio recorder was running. Every conversation tonight was getting saved. I wasn't just collecting evidence for revenge anymore. I was documenting her character, her tone, her guilt, her lies. I stared across the room at her family, laughing without a clue. They had no idea what they'd stepped into by coming here. But they'd find out soon enough. Dessert was next. Then coffee. Then the envelope under my chair. Then the truth. Delaney was still laughing when she looked up and caught my eyes. I didn't blink. I didn't smile. She paused, just for a second. Her voice wavered. She didn't know what I'd stepped into or how deep I was already in it. But she would. Soon. The tension in the room was invisible but heavy. Like the kind of air before a storm. You can't see it, but you feel on your skin. I sat at the head of the table, dessert plates clinking, coffee being poured. Her dad was talking about real estate. Harper was scrolling through vacation photos on her phone. And Delaney kept looking at me. Her smile had stiffened. Her posture was tighter. She felt it. The shift. She didn't know what it was yet, but she knew something was coming. The truth was, the moment I'd been planning for was just minutes away. I looked down at my leg, where the envelope rested under my chair. Inside were photos, full color, time-stamped, undeniable. The receipts, the texts, a transcription of a voicemail. And a final note I had written in clear, simple words. This is who she is when no one's watching. I waited until the coffee was nearly done. Then I stood up, slowly, calmly. Everyone turned. "I just want to say something before we end the night," I said. My voice was steady, natural. Delaney's eyes widened. Her head tilted slightly. She smiled, but it cracked at the edges. "I think it's important," I continued, "that when we talk about family, we also talk about truth." Harper blinked. Her dad sat up a little straighter. Delaney spoke, voice tight. "Logan, what are you doing?" I reached under the chair, pulled out the envelope, held it in my hand, and I looked straight at her when I said, "I think it's time you show them the real you." The room froze. The silence that followed, it was louder than anything I could have said. The room didn't erupt. Not yet. The silence stretched long enough to make Harper shift in her seat and Delaney's father clear his throat. Her mother reached for her wine. Delaney didn't move. Her face was frozen, not confused, not surprised. Just still. She knew. I walked toward the side table, placed the envelope down beside the dessert tray. "I wasn't going to say anything," I said. I really wasn't. But after what I've learned, I couldn't stay quiet. Delaney pushed her chair back, slowly. Logan, don't do this. You already did. I didn't yell. I didn't rage. I just said it straight. You've been lying to everyone in this room. Not just to me. To your entire family. Harper laughed awkwardly. Is this a joke? No, I said. But there's plenty of material if you want comedy. I turned and walked out. Straight through the kitchen. Into the garage. Because this was part of the plan. I left the rest of the evidence out here. Backups. Just in case she tried to deny anything. In the top drawer of my workbench was a USB. Another set of photos. And the burner phone, now wiped and loaded with select messages and voicemails. I grabbed the box I had prepared 2 days ago. Not heavy, just the weight of truth. Behind me, the garage door creaked open. Delaney. She didn't say anything at first. Just stared at me, eyes glassy. You planned this, she whispered. Yeah, I said, turning to face her. You planned something too. A lot of things, actually. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I handed her the burner phone. Go ahead. Tell them it's fake. She didn't take it. Because she knew. The garage, my space, had become the place where her lies were dissected and prepared for the world to see. And now, there was no walking it back. For what it's worth, Delaney said, I never meant to hurt you. I looked at her in the dim garage light, trying to figure out how someone could speak so calmly when their entire world was moments from collapse. You didn't mean to hurt me, I repeated. You just didn't care if you did. She stepped forward, crossing her arms. You think you're so in control right now. But what do you want, Logan? Huh? You want to humiliate me in front of my family. I didn't answer right away. I let the question sit there, let her hear her own voice echo through the garage. Then I said, I want the truth in the open. Not for them. Not even for you. For me. She blinked, confused. I've spent the last year lying to myself. Convincing myself I was overreacting. That I was paranoid. That if I just did more, you'd come back to me. But you were already gone, weren't you? You left long before I ever suspected. Her lip trembled just slightly. It wasn't about love. No, I cut her off. It was about power. You did it because you could. Because I gave you everything and never made you earn a damn thing. She stepped back like I'd slapped her. And now, I added, I'm taking it back. I pushed the box into her hands. Give this to them, or I will. For what it's worth, she repeated, but it was quieter this time. I shook my head. Save it. You don't get to rewrite the story now. I walked back inside before she could reply. Because this wasn't just for revenge anymore. This was for closure. For balance. For me. Back inside, the energy had shifted. No one was laughing now. Delaney's father looked stiff. Her mother was clutching her necklace. Harper had stopped pretending to be on her phone. And I knew they'd heard enough of our conversation to know the smiles were done. Delaney followed a few minutes later, holding the box. She sat on the table like it weighed 50 pounds. Logan, she said, don't do this. I stood across from her, not angry, not theatrical, just clear. There's more. A lot more. Messages. Photos. Hotel confirmations. Voicemails. I can play one right now if you'd like. No, she said quickly, her voice cracking. Please, not here. I looked around the room. Her family's eyes were on her now, not me. Her dad leaned forward slightly, eyes sharp. Delaney, he said. What's he talking about? I made a mistake, she said. A few bad choices. A few. I said, raising an eyebrow. Try a 6-month affair. In our house. While I was at work. There's more than just a mistake here. Her mother looked like she was about to be sick. Delaney shook her head, hands shaking. I didn't want it to come out like this. I opened the box and pulled out a photo. Delaney with Briggs. Arms around each other. At the gas station 3 blocks from our house. Her wearing my hoodie. I laid it gently on the table. You made choices, I said. And now you deal with the consequences. Delaney looked at her family. But no one spoke. No one defended her. Not anymore. And I saw it in her face. That awful realization. She had lost more than a husband tonight. She'd lost the version of herself that they used to believe in. Chapter 16. The chairs were still warm when the room emptied. Everyone left fast after that photo hit the table. No yelling. No slam doors. Just quiet disbelief and awkward muttering as Delaney's entire family filed out. Harper was the last to leave, pausing at the door like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. I stood there, hands resting on the back of the dining chair where Delaney had sat just minutes earlier. Green cushion, slight wine stain near the edge from her glass tipping. These were the chairs we picked out together during a weekend trip to Vermont. She loved the way the curved backs looked in photos, so they made the room feel warm. Now I looked at them and saw nothing but fiction. Set pieces for the show she'd been running for months. She was still in the house. I heard her moving upstairs, quiet, deliberate, maybe packing, maybe panicking. I didn't care. What mattered now was what I had built beneath this moment. The truth was out, but that was just the first act. I pulled out the chair closest to mine and sat. The weight of it creaked slightly. I pulled the burner phone out of my pocket and started backing up the final copies of everything I hadn't shown tonight. There were layers Delaney didn't even know I had. Emails that tied her to a joint account. A strange money transfer from Shell Company connected to Briggs. And one message that made my hands go cold when I first read it. Once it's done, we split clean. He won't see it coming. Split clean? What exactly were they planning to take? The truth was, the dinner wasn't the end. It was the test. And the game of chairs? It had just moved into the next round. Chapter 17. And then what if I'm wrong? That question clawed at me while I stood under the shower stream that night. Hot water scalding my skin, trying to clear my head. What if I took it too far? What if there was some explanation, some corner of the story I didn't understand? But that thought never lasted long. Because the more I looked at the evidence, the clearer the truth became. There was no misunderstanding. No half-truths. Just betrayal. And now, I wanted more. More than just public humiliation. More than an awkward family dinner. I wanted answers. I wanted the full picture of what they thought they were doing, and I wanted to end it with no questions left. That's when I called Tess. We hadn't spoken in 2 years. Not since she left the private security game and took a quiet job at a digital forensics firm in Portland. But she picked up on the second ring. Logan. Yeah. Silence. Then, you only call when you need something. And I need something. I gave her a rundown, not everything, but enough. She asked the right questions. Precise. Efficient. You have account numbers? Yes. Burner phone. Cloned and backed up. You want surveillance? I want proof. Anything they might be hiding that's bigger than the affair. Another pause. Send me the data. I'll see what I can dig up. I hung up and stared at the bathroom mirror, still fogged. And then it hit me again. She didn't just cheat. She used me. And she wasn't done yet. I dried off. Got dressed. Packed a bag. Because if this went the way I thought it might, and if Briggs was in deeper than he let on, this story wasn't over. Not even close. Chapter 18. I stood in the doorway the next morning, bag slung over my shoulder, keys in hand. Delaney sat at the edge of the bed, still in her robe, face blank. Empty. She hadn't said much since the dinner. Just a few broken sentences, mostly excuses. You just gonna walk out? She asked. I didn't answer right away. Just looked at her, really looked at her one last time. This woman used to be my person. Now, she was just a stranger wearing her skin. I'm going to Oregon, I said finally. Cabin's mine now. Place needs work. What about this? She asked. This? I repeated. There's no this anymore. She stood, voice shaking. You can't just disappear. What am I supposed to tell people? I stared at her, not blinking. Tell them the truth. And with that, I turned and walked out. The drive was long. 8 hours. My phone buzzed a dozen times, then stopped. Her name disappeared from my screen like smoke. The cabin sat at the edge of a forest. Quiet. No distractions. No neighbors. Just me and the silence I'd been chasing for months without knowing it. I dropped my bag by the door, stepped onto the porch, and took a long breath. It wasn't over, but it was paused. Tess texted me around 2 a.m. Got something. You're going to want to see this. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I whispered into the night. Okay, let's finish this. The confession didn't come the way I expected. It wasn't a voicemail or a face-to-face sob story or some guilt-laced apology. No, Delaney's confession came buried inside a digital folder Tess decrypted from an encrypted email backup. When she called, her voice was flat, controlled. She didn't do drama. That's why I trusted her. I got into the Gmail archive. And Logan, you need to hear this. She sent over a single audio file, 38 seconds long. I sat alone in the cabin, headphones in, heart already thudding. Press play. Delaney's voice. Low. Nervous. If anything goes wrong, we deny. Logan never knew about the consulting deal. He was never listed. If the audit hits, we pin it on his access history. You understand me, right? No digital trail leading to us. I'll handle the narrative. Click. Silence. I pulled the headphones off and just sat there. She wasn't just cheating. She was setting me up. This wasn't just infidelity. It was betrayal on a business level. Something bigger. Something that could have wrecked my career, maybe even dragged me into a legal fire I didn't cause. My hand shook, not from fear, from clarity, because now I knew why she stayed so long, why she played perfect, why she kissed me on the cheek and told me she loved me, while prepping an escape plan with Briggs that left me holding the bag. She wasn't trying to protect me. She was trying to frame me. And now I had her confession. It wasn't just revenge anymore. This was war. Fallout has a smell. You think it's metaphorical until you're in it. Until the smoke clears and what's left is silence, scorched earth, and the ash of everything you used to believe in. The cabin was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I sent Tess the green light. We weren't just playing defense now. We were going on the offensive. She was ready. Briggs's firm? About to get hit with a digital file dump that linked him to Delaney's sabotage. Delaney's name would show up on every document. My name? Never once attached. Tess had made sure of it. By the time I'm done, she texted, they'll cut him loose and she'll be radioactive. But fallout doesn't only happen on their end. I sat with a glass of bourbon and realized, this changes me. I wasn't the same man who walked into that dinner with garlic on my hands. I crossed a line, not just morally, but emotionally. And part of me didn't want to come back. That's the part Delaney never understood. She thought the worst I could do was yell. Maybe leave. Maybe shame her in front of her family. She didn't know that I knew how to ruin someone without raising my voice. And now, she was waking up to consequences she never imagined. Her phone would be buzzing. Her clients would vanish. Briggs would panic. And I would sip this bourbon and wait. Because revenge isn't always fire. Sometimes fallout is cold. Delaney finally called. But I didn't answer. Not the first time. Not the second. Not even the fourth. Her voicemail started out angry. Logan, I swear to God if you're doing something behind my back. Then they got desperate. Please, can we talk? This once. I'll let the pile up. I let her sit in it. Because silence was the one thing she never knew how to handle. She lived in control, in manipulation, in manufactured intimacy. But silence? That meant she couldn't read me. Couldn't calculate her next move. And I wanted her off balance. I checked the tracker Tess had installed. Delaney had visited Briggs's apartment 3 times in one day. Then she disappeared for a full night. No location signal. Probably scrubbing devices. Maybe even trying to delete files. Too late. Tess had everything backed up, time-stamped, stored in 5 different cloud systems. It was done. I wasn't going to call her back. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I sat on the porch, staring at the pine trees, letting the breeze brush through my hair, and smiled for the first time in months. Not because I won, but because I didn't need her voice in my head anymore. She used to speak, and my world shifted. Now, her silence said more than anything she could have confessed. And I liked it this way, because in that stillness, I finally heard myself again. Delaney made one mistake. She thought walking out of that dinner with her head low was the end of the story. Her dramatic exit, the embarrassed sighs, the whispered apologies to her family. It was all just performance. But the real exit? That came when I erased her from my life piece by piece. I canceled the joint credit cards, froze the shared savings, called the realtor about the house we'd once dreamed of flipping together. It'll go on the market next week, I said. I'm done with it. The lawyer I had on standby sent over divorce paperwork the next day. No argument, no negotiation, full financial disclosure, complete with a data log of her infidelity and breach of marital trust. She couldn't fight it. She knew it. When Tess confirmed that Briggs had been removed from his firm and was now under internal investigation, I knew we were just getting started. I drove to the city that evening, windows down, playlist off. No music, just the sound of tires and time. Delaney texted once. Can we meet before things go too far? Too far? We were already past that exit, and she missed it. I met Tess in a dim, quiet cafe. She had a black hoodie on, no makeup, laptop open, hands flying over the keys like a surgeon in a rush. There's a shift happening, she said without looking up. Meaning, her digital footprint's changing. She's deleting stuff, running VPNs, trying to scrub devices. Too late for that. She nodded. Way too late. On the screen, she showed me email threads. Bank records. Encrypted files that Delaney and Briggs had sent to a third-party server, possibly to move client data from my firm to his. Tess traced the server back to a shell company. Briggs's name was on the corporate registry. Delaney's? A power of attorney signed 3 months ago. They weren't just cheating. They were building a life without me. With my resources. With my contacts. With my name. And they planned to leave me holding the legal risk when the system caught up to them. That's when I stopped feeling angry. Because anger fades. Well, I felt now. Precision. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to undo them. Carefully. Legally. Publicly. Tess smiled as she packed up. They won't even know where the floor went. Let it shift under them, I said. Hard. Fast. And permanent. Loose ends are dangerous. You think you tied it all up, handled every detail, and then something you overlook slips out and pulls the whole thing apart. I wasn't about to let that happen. I went through everything one more time. Emails, audio files, phone logs, even screenshots from hotel staff and a text from a bartender who'd seen them together. I wanted airtight closure. No notice. No questions. Then I saw it. A number. Unfamiliar. Attached to a transfer Delaney had made 2 weeks before the dinner. $8,000 wired to someone named L. Packer. It wasn't Briggs. It wasn't family. I called Tess. She answered on the first ring. Yeah. Who's L. Packer? Typing in the background. Quick clicks. Then she said, That's a lawyer. I stood up from the desk. She retained counsel? Looks like it. Before the dinner? Yeah. I laughed once. Quiet. Cold. She knew it was coming. She knew I might find out. And she prepared her escape hatch. But here's the thing about loose ends. Sometimes they show you how deep the deception goes. Because if she had legal help before I ever confronted her, then maybe she was never afraid. Maybe this was her plan the whole time. To take the money, the firm, the future, and leave me buried under it. But that wire transfer, that was her mistake. Because now I had someone new to target. And this time, I was cutting every loose end clean. The lawyer's office sat on the 12th floor of a quiet midtown building. Clean lobby, marble floors, neutral tones, the kind of place that didn't ask questions, just sent invoices. Tess pulled the files as I drove in. L. Packer has handled fraud cases before, she said. Mostly asset shielding, corporate defense, NDA violations. Criminal gray area. She knows how to walk the line. I parked across the street. Watched the windows. Thought about walking in. Thought about making contact. But I didn't need to yet. Not face to face. Instead, I contacted someone else. Derek Lowell, old friend, now head of compliance at the Regional Bureau of Investigation. We hadn't spoken in years. Not since the private security work dried up. But he owed me. I helped his kid when he went missing in Seattle. Found him before the cops did. Logan, Derek said after a pause. Been a while. I've got something you'll want to see. How bad? Guy Froth. Data theft. And a corporate setup to bury the evidence. He whistled. Whose hands are dirty? 2 names you'll recognize. I gave him the file. I gave him the dates. I didn't say I was personally involved. Not yet. That contact was made not to blow the whole thing open, but to put pressure on the right walls. To get eyes in the right rooms. Briggs. Delaney. Packer. Let them feel the tension. Let them sense something moving just outside their view. Because when people think they still have control, they're vulnerable. And when a knock comes at the door, it hits harder if they never saw the contact coming. Delaney was unraveling. I saw it in the footage Tess pulled from her apartment security cams. The once polished woman who walked with ease through crowds, who smiled like she had every room in her palm, now pacing. Hunched over, on edge, Briggs had stopped responding. His silence wasn't loyalty, it was fear. And Delaney? She was trying to hold the mask together with shaking hands. Tess sent a clip over late that night. Delaney arguing with someone outside a cafe. Dressed down, dark sunglasses, phone pressed her ear. "You promised," she snapped. "You said you'd clean it." Then she turned, saw someone watching, and smiled. That's what struck me most. That smile. It wasn't joy. It wasn't relief. It was performance. I realized she'd been doing it for years. Maybe since day one. She smiled to disarm, to distract, to delay. And now, with her world caving in, she was still trying to wear it. That mask had fooled me once. But not anymore. Because masks don't just hide faces. They hide intentions, motives, secrets. And when they slip, you don't see a stranger. You see who they were all along. They wanted to bury me. That was the plan. Use my client list. Transfer funds slowly under dummy LLCs. Push the risk onto my digital footprint while building their own firm out of the ashes. And if I ever found out, Delaney had Packer lined up. A soft exit. A sob story. Legal firewalls. But they underestimated one thing. I had leverage. Briggs's firm had strict non-compete clauses. One whisper of stolen IP, and they'd turn on him to protect their own reputation. So I whispered. Not with words. With data. Tess sent an anonymous tip to their board, attaching partial transaction logs, burner email chains, metadata trails. Enough to scare them. Not enough to tie me to it. Within 48 hours, Briggs was suspended pending review. Delaney, now detached from his fall, began calling me again. I didn't pick up, but I answered in my own way. I mailed a single flash drive to her apartment. No note, no return address. Inside, video from a hidden camera in our bedroom. Not of them sleeping together. That wasn't my style. It was the audio, her voice, her saying, "He won't know. He never asks questions. He trusts too much." That was the real betrayal. Not sex, not lies. The casual cruelty in her voice. The way she dismissed me like I was dumb, blind, like I was nothing. Now, she knew exactly what I was. I was the one holding the rope, and I had all the leverage. Briggs showed up at the cabin at 9:12 p.m. No call, no warning, just headlights sweeping across the tree line and a knock at the front door like he owned the place. I opened it slow, didn't say a word. He stood there, breathing heavy, trying to look calm, but his eyes betrayed him. He was sweating through his dress shirt. "Can we talk?" he said. I stepped aside, let him in. He didn't sit, just hovered near the entryway like a man waiting to get shot. "You sent the drive?" he said. I didn't answer. He rubbed his face. "You have no idea what kind of fire you're playing with." I almost laughed. "Briggs, that's where you're wrong. I know exactly what kind of fire I'm holding, and you're already burning." He stepped closer. "Look, maybe this got messy, but I never meant for it to go this far." "Messy," I echoed. "You try to steal my clients. My business. My life." He lowered his voice. "I can make this right." "You can't," I said, "because this isn't about you anymore. This is about consequences." He finally snapped. "If you take me down, I swear I will drag you into it. I'll lie. I'll say you were part of it from the beginning." I stepped in closer than he expected, inches from his face. "Do it," I said. "Lie under oath. Commit perjury. Let's see how far you get before your own firm hands you over to save their skin." He didn't speak, because that wasn't a bluff. That was a threat he couldn't match. And for the first time, he looked scared. Good. The courtroom wasn't packed, but it didn't have to be. Briggs sat at the defendant's table, flanked by two lawyers who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Delaney was across from me, her hair pulled back, dressed sharp, lips tight. She wouldn't look at me. My attorney was solid, quiet, ruthless when he needed to be, but I didn't rely on him to tell the story. I relied on proof. Emails, bank records, affidavits from two former co-workers who'd heard Briggs boasting about bleeding a business dry. Testimony from a forensic accountant Tess pulled in, a clean, professional statement that mapped every move they made. The judge read the case summary, eyebrows raising slightly. My lawyer leaned in. "They didn't expect you to come with this much fire." "Good," I said. "Let them drown in it." Delaney took the stand on the third day. She swore in, hands shaking. They asked her directly, "Did you knowingly assist in transferring protected financial records from your husband's firm to a third party?" She paused, just for a breath. "Yes." The room fell silent. Even Briggs looked stunned. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't gloat. I didn't grandstand. I just looked at her and said, "You didn't just cheat on me. You tried to erase me." Then I looked at Briggs. "And you picked the wrong man to rob." The judge called a recess, and I walked out of that room feeling nothing but calm. Because I hadn't just won a legal battle. I'd started to reclaim my name, one fact at a time. She waited outside the courthouse, leaned against her car, black boots, messy hair, sipping a coffee like it was just another Tuesday. "You know you just crushed them, right?" Tess said. I nodded. "Almost doesn't feel real." She smirked. "It will when the settlement hits your account." Briggs's firm had already offered a payout to avoid going public. They didn't want a media firestorm. They didn't want investors asking questions. Delaney's name was shredded in legal circles. No one would trust her again. But Tess wasn't done. "I did some digging," she said. "You want the whole truth?" I hesitated, then nodded. She handed me a file. "Briggs started talking to her a year before you found out. He had her on the hook early. Fed her the plan, the money, everything." I flipped through the documents. Transaction dates, early emails, photos from a business dinner, too close for just business. My hands didn't shake. "Not anymore. She was in on it from the beginning," I said. "Yeah," Tess said. "She was the bait." I closed the file, tucked it under my arm. "Thanks," I said, "for everything." She shrugged. "You did the hard part. I just helped you see it." She looked at me, more serious now. "You're free, Logan. Don't waste it." I nodded. Because this time, I wasn't walking away bitter. I was walking away better. And Tess, she wasn't just backup anymore. She was part of the reason I survived it. Delaney asked to meet. I almost said no. Almost deleted the message before finishing it. But something about the tone, short, almost restrained, made me pause. No pleading. No threats. Just, "I need to talk. Just once. Please." So I agreed. We met in a park halfway between the city and the cabin. Neutral ground. Middle of the day. Public. No shadows to hide in. She sat on the bench first, looking thinner, quieter. Not like the woman who used to run every room. This version looked like someone still trying to figure out if she was supposed to fight or surrender. I sat down beside her. Said nothing. She spoke first. "I didn't come here to beg." I nodded. "Good. Don't. She looked down at her hands. "I wanted you to know it wasn't all fake. What we had, I mean." I let out a quiet breath. "You sure?" Because from where I'm sitting, I was a placeholder. A convenience. "No," she said, shaking her head. "You were the only real part. That's why I stayed so long." I looked at her. Not with anger. Just exhaustion. "Then why burn it down?" She took a long breath. Her voice cracked when she said, "Because I was never enough on my own. I thought if I could just build something without depending on you, I'd matter more." "That's not how love works," I said. "I know," she whispered. "Too late, I know." We sat in silence for a while. Then she turned to me. "Did you ever really love me?" I met her eyes. "I did. More than you'll ever understand. Until the day you gave me every reason not to." She looked away. And that was the only confession I needed. Back at the cabin, I cleaned everything. Literally. The garage, the porch, the shelves in the kitchen. I scrubbed grout, tossed old files, burned the last box of wedding keepsakes in the fire pit out back. I deleted the photo folders from my laptop, cleared the recordings from my phone, formatted the backup drive Tess gave me. The evidence had done its job. The weight had shifted. Now I needed space. Clean air. Clean conscience. But cleaning isn't just physical. It's psychological. An emotional dirt sticks deeper. I stood in the bathroom, staring at the mirror, razor in one hand. My beard had grown in heavy through the madness. I hadn't shaved in weeks. I leaned forward, pressed a towel to my jaw, and started shaving. Slow, careful. Each swipe felt like cutting away dead weight. Not just hair, grief, anger, obsession. The man in the mirror was still me, but sharper now. Older in the eyes, stronger in the jaw, wiser in the soul. I looked down at the sink, at the dark stubble circling the drain. Funny how something so small can feel like shedding a skin. That night, I changed the sheets. Slept with the windows open. Let the wind in. No alarms. No heaviness. Just the sound of clean air moving through a space that finally felt like mine again. It was Tessa's idea. You ever think about telling your story publicly? She asked one night over the phone. I know guys in media, podcasts, even a documentary angle. I laughed at first. You want me to narrate my own humiliation? No, she said. I want you to narrate your survival. It took me a week to say yes. I booked a small studio space outside Portland. Nothing flashy, just a mic, a booth, and a producer who barely said 2 words. The podcast wasn't about drama. No names. No timelines. Just truth. I spoke honestly. About betrayal. About silence. About the cold realization that sometimes the person you trust most will cut you the deepest. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I spoke like a man who had been to the edge and climbed back on his own. That first episode went viral. Not for the reasons I expected. It wasn't because I exposed anything. It was because people saw themselves in it. Men, women, strangers I'd never meet, all sending messages. Thank you for saying it out loud. I thought I was crazy until I heard this. You helped me leave her. And suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. My pain had a purpose. My wounds had a voice. And people were listening. The flames cracked as they rose in the pit behind the cabin. I stood there with the last folder in my hands, a manila envelope packed with old receipts, text logs, printed voicemails, and the final copy of her voice from that burner phone. I hadn't opened it in weeks. I didn't need to. I already knew every line by heart. But holding it again brought everything back. The lies, the manipulation, the version of me I almost became. It was cold that night. Clear sky. Silence all around, except for the low hiss of wood splitting in heat. I crouched down and dropped the folder in. The fire caught fast. Bright orange swallowed it whole. Every document, every picture, every line of text. There's something cleansing about fire. It doesn't argue, doesn't judge. It just takes what you feed it and leaves nothing behind. Delaney had texted earlier that day. I saw your podcast. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I'm glad you're doing better. I didn't reply, not because I hated her, but because her chapter was over. Some stories don't need a second ending. I watched the last piece of paper curl into ash. Took a breath. Deep. Solid. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I was free. And I burned the last part of her that still lived in my house and in me. Her name was Jessa. We met at the hardware store. She was in the paint aisle, comparing swatches, arguing with herself over forest green or charcoal gray. I passed by with a box of nails and a new deck saw on my cart, not out of habit. She glanced up, then back to the color cards. You ever try to repaint a room and end up repainting your whole life? I smiled. I burned mine instead. She laughed. Honest, unfiltered, not looking for anything. That's one way to do it. We talked for 5 minutes. Then she handed me her number with a wink. In case you want to tell me what color you landed on. I didn't call her that day. I waited a week. Not because I was afraid, but because for the first time in a long time, I didn't need to rush. Jessa wasn't Delaney. She wasn't polished or poised. She didn't say the perfect thing or tilt her head just right. She was real. She asked hard questions, called out my silences, listened when I spoke like my words mattered. We didn't dive into anything heavy. No declarations. No pressure. Just 2 people standing in the wreckage of their own stories, seeing what came next. Some days, she visited the cabin, brought coffee, sat on the porch with me in silence. Other days, she texted a meme and said, "Don't forget to breathe today." She didn't save me. I'd already done that. But she gave me something I didn't know I needed. A chance to feel something again, without fear. It was a quiet morning. No calls. No alerts. No fires to put out. I stepped out onto the porch barefoot, coffee in hand, and watched the sun lift over the treetops. A soft breeze drifted in from the ridge, cool against my face. Birds stirred. The wind rustled the tall grass. No engines. No voices. No lies. Just peace. It had been months since the dinner. Since the court dates. Since Delaney's mask cracked. Since Briggs tried to throw punches and got buried under depositions instead. I hadn't heard from either of them in a while. Tess said the investigations were still crawling through the rest of the shell companies, and that the IRS was sniffing around now. I wished them both luck. Not really. I took a sip of coffee and watched the trees sway. Jessa was still sleeping inside, curled up with a book she didn't finish last night. She talked in her sleep sometimes. I liked that about her. She didn't know everything about me yet, but she knew enough. I told her about the affair, the betrayal, the fire, the fallout. She didn't flinch, just nodded and said, "That's heavy, but it's not the end of you." She was right. The storm was over. The wreckage had settled. The lies were ash. The silence was full of truth now. And me? I'd never been this calm in my life. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was finally mine. Chapter 37. Letter. I found the letter while cleaning out an old box in the attic. Not one from Delaney. Not some leftover apology or forgotten receipt. This one was from my dad. Handwritten, yellowed paper, folded into a weathered envelope marked, "In case you need this one day." He passed 5 years ago. Quiet heart failure. No drama. No long goodbye. He just faded out in his sleep. The same way he moved through life. Calm, honest, no loose ends. I sat on the edge of the bed, unfolded the letter, and read slowly. Logan, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. And if you're anything like me, you've been trying to keep everything together too long. Here's the thing. You don't have to carry it all. You'll love someone who won't love you back right. You'll trust someone who doesn't deserve it. You'll get burned. That's life. But don't let pain make you cruel. Let it make you clear. Know what you stand for. Know when to walk away. And remember, silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the loudest power there is. I'm proud of you, kid. Whatever you're facing, you'll handle it. Then I sat there for a long time. The house was quiet. Outside, the trees moved like they had something to say. But inside, I felt still. Everything my father was quiet strength, loyalty, clarity, had shaped me more than I realized. That letter didn't tell me what to do. It reminded me who I was. And I needed that more than anything. Some things hit you slow. Not like a punch, but like sunrise. Quiet. Inevitable. That's what clarity felt like the morning I signed the final settlement papers. Delaney didn't contest anything. No long fights. No final digs. No courtroom drama. Just a pen on paper and a silence between us that said everything. She looked older now. Not in a bad way. Just worn. Human. Like someone who had lived through a storm of her own. We didn't exchange words. We didn't need to. The moment was clean. Simple. Clear. I walked out of that office lighter. No weight pulling at my chest. No what-ifs gnawing at my thoughts. She was part of my story. But she wasn't part of my ending. That clarity changed something in me. I stopped checking old messages. Stopped wondering if people still talked about what happened. Stopped thinking about revenge. Because I didn't need her ruined anymore. I just needed me to be whole again. And standing in the sunlight outside the courthouse, I finally was. Life gives you 1,000 choices you don't notice until they're gone. But this was mine. Fully. Loud and clear. Stay bitter or let it go. Burn everything or move on. Jessa and I sat by the lake one afternoon, our feet in the water, drinks sweating in our hands. She leaned into my shoulder and whispered, "You ever think about how fast everything changes?" "All the time," I said. "Do you miss it?" "Miss what?" "The chaos." I smiled. "No, I survived it. That's enough." She took my hand. Said nothing. That was the choice. To stop measuring life by damage. To stop letting other people's betrayal define my worth. To stop waiting for another hit. I'd had enough fire, enough fallout, enough silence. Now I wanted space. Peace. Someone who chose me without a secret plan. That night, I deleted the last backup. Gone. No more safety nets. No more war files. Just the present. That was my choice. Not to forget, but to stop carrying it. I chopped wood that morning. Not because I needed it. The cabin's fully electric now, and the heater works fine. But there's something honest about splitting logs. Simple. Immediate. Each crack of the axe against the grain echoed through the trees like a heartbeat. It was the kind of task that didn't ask much of you, just rhythm, strength, presence. Jessa was inside, brewing coffee. A record spun on the old player we found at a thrift shop last month. Some vinyl with bluesy guitar and a voice that sounded like it had lived 100 years. I stacked the logs neatly. Took a breath. It was different now. I didn't wake up thinking about Delaney. Didn't wonder what Briggs was doing. Didn't count the scars or keep mental tabs on how I survived it all. I'd already done that part. What remained was stillness. Not emptiness, just quiet. Jessa stepped out onto the porch, wrapped in her old flannel jacket, mug in hand. "You done playing lumberjack?" she teased. "Almost." She smiled, then looked out at the trees. "Hard to believe this is real, huh?" I wiped sweat from my brow, leaned on the axe. "Yeah, but I think the best endings don't feel loud. They feel earned." And that's exactly what this was. Not revenge, not destruction, just the end of something broken and the start of something better. The kind of peace you only find after losing everything you thought you needed and realizing what you needed was yourself. If you've made it here, maybe a part of this story hit home. Maybe you've felt betrayal. Maybe you've had to rebuild from the ground up. Or maybe you're just wondering how you'd react if the person you trusted most turned out to be your biggest enemy. So tell me this. What would you do if the truth walked through your door when you least expected it? Drop in the comments. I read every one. And if this story made you feel something, like, share, and hit that subscribe button so we can keep building more stories that don't just entertain, they leave a mark. Until next time, stay sharp, stay grounded, and never let someone else write your ending.